Hey, what's up, guys? Good to be back with you again today. And I know I've talked a little bit about the value of old APBA cards and very, very little actually about old Strat-O-Matic cards before. Those of you who've been following the forums and who've been following eBay probably know already what I'm going to talk about here, especially as soon as you look at the thumbnail. But I might as well bring this up anyway. So we did have a major auction end very recently, as you can tell behind my head. I guess I'm not covering up too much. There were two auctions that happened at the same time. One for the original 1953 APBA baseball game cards, that is for the 53 season, and another one for the 1954 season. So a couple of things to know first. First of all, these cards look beautiful, especially this 53 set. It looks absolutely gorgeous. The cards look clean. They look like they have been played with, but very, very sparingly. Those are the original envelopes from what I can see. You can see some discoloration on the cards, but it's still pretty good considering it's how old it is. I can't quite see from here, and I would have to download this picture to really be able to take a close look and see that this actually is from the 53 season, but I would definitely believe it. I will go through and download these pictures, of course, because, I mean, that's just what you do. Final bid on this one was $1,925, which to some of us might seem like a lot of money. But when you consider how few of these original single-column seasons are out there, that sounds like a bargain to me. That sounds much, much lower than the price I would expect this usually to attract. The next thing we're going to look for through here is the 54 APBA set that was sold by the same seller at the same time. We'll just take a look here really quick at what these cards look like. Again, the envelopes are very, very clean. Backs of the cards look awesome. Fronts of these cards look great. I mean, look at that Mickey Mantle. Look at that Willie Mays. These look really, really nice. Jackie Robinson. These look like nice, nice cards with that old font and that old style to them. A little bit close up, and then you can see here that these cards are even more white than the ones before. I'm guessing that the guy who had them originally had some sort of 1953 project, but it looks like he never touched 1954. I mean, these look like, some of these look like they're still new. There's your lineup sheet, also completely intact. As you may know, for these really, really old sets, these lineup sheets are hard to come across, and there it is in all of its glory in the plastic protecting sleeve. It has been written on, which means that he did play with the cards, but still, that's really, really nice given its age. This one went for $2,750, and so neither of these even hit the $5,000 range, which, again, is incredible when you realize how old and how rare these are. As he says right here, I'm yet to see a full set of originals from 1954, at least on eBay. I'm not sure how many of these have sold either, and 53 is another set where he's yet to see a full set of originals from 53. That's another set that's extremely rare. Interesting to see that didn't attract much higher amounts in terms of bidding. Now, what can be behind this? Well, we have to be careful. We always have to be careful when we're talking about products that are very, very rare, for which the demand is kind of uncertain, right? So if you are collecting APBA cards, there are a couple of things. Here we go. There are a couple of things that you have to keep in mind if you're trying to sell them. First of all, demand is lower now than it's ever been before. I already talked about the problems with APBA's website. I've already talked about some of the problems with APBA not marketing its game. There have been problems with the APBA Game Company going bankrupt numerous times in my lifetime. There have been all sorts of issues with this game that have prevented at least one, if not multiple generations of young players from even approaching it. As a result, you have mostly old guys selling this game to other old guys who are trying to make their own collections and get whatever little bit of happiness they can before they pass on. This is not very sustainable for the market, and at some point in time, the bottom will likely literally fall out of the market, right? I do know that there are some collectors and some big companies that will make purchases of these sets and then will try to piece them off or sell them, little by little. I would venture to guess that that is becoming less and less successful as time goes on, just because the demand is not there and there are not many people playing with this. Really, these cards, these two sets probably should be in a museum somewhere, but unfortunately there is no APBA museum. I know that J. Richard Seitz talked about starting one, but the problem is that he didn't. He passed away instead, and he should have started it. That would have made a lot more sense. So that's the first problem, which is kind of the lack of demand in general for these cards. Second problem that I see here is a little bit less prominent, but it is the fact that these cards are going to be reprinted and probably reprinted pretty soon. So if you've been living under a rock, and I had for a while, APBA reprinted the original 1950 cards, the original single column cards, recently, and also reprinted the original 51 cards. This year, I believe, at the APBA convention, they're allowing the sale of reprinted versions of the 1952 cards, which tells me that it's likely going to be the case that they're going to complete reprinting all the original single column sets. This is a great thing for APBA to do. Really, they should have done this years ago. I don't know why they didn't do this in like 2000, 2001 for the 50th anniversary of the company. This is what they should have done. I would have bought this set back then, and I was in high school, right? But instead of doing that, they decided to wait and wait and wait for whatever reason, and the current ownership finally understands what they really should be doing. That's really what should be going on. I mean, in my opinion, you'll hear more of this later when we start talking about the history of APBA cards. My opinion is that when J. Richard Seitz died, really his estate should have, or at least the cards in the estate should have been given to the APBA Game Company instead of being bought off piecemeal by collectors and being sold around here and there. I mean, because it's kind of embarrassing when I read correspondence from people who were kind of in the know back in those days, who say that, yeah, you know, Fritz Light didn't have copies of any of the old sets. I mean, it's just totally ridiculous. It should have been with the game company. I mean, that's only the right thing to do. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen, and this stuff will continue selling on the secondary market until finally the price lowers to the point where somebody can buy it and make up their own museum. Anyway, it's a shame. The one other thing I'll say about this that I think is sort of biting into the price here, and we'll go back here to the screen, is the fact that both of these auctions happened at the same time. Right, so this auction ended at just about 4:30 on May 20th, and so did this auction. Right, and that's a problem. I don't know if you've had much experience selling things on eBay or not. I've had a little bit. I sold all of my old cards away a little while ago. And I'll tell you that one of the things you learn pretty quickly on is that you don't want to have two auctions that compete with each other at the same time. If you are not under time pressure to sell, the best thing to do is to get an idea of what the auction is probably going to go for and create a buy it now that's like 2 times higher and wait for people to negotiate the price with you. In this case, this guy could have probably made buy it nows for about $10,000 for each set and could have just sat back and waited. And he probably would have had more than, under $3,000 as the winning bid. And the reason why you want to do that as a seller is because if you allow people to bid on it, it depends upon who has money now and who wants to bid and how many excited bidders you can get. And guess what? APBA cards are probably not at the top of everybody's list. That's the reason why when you go on eBay these days to buy like a used APBA set or whatever, you're going to be looking at like crazy prices for something that's just the crappy cards with the box that everybody had back in the day. Well, it's because the price has been inflated and they expect you to try to negotiate the price with the seller. So you go to one, you negotiate it, and if he doesn't budge at all, you say screw you and go to the next one, and then you can get it for the price you want. All right, that's kind of how what eBay has turned into. That's a completely different discussion. We can talk at a different time about whether one is better than the other. When I sold my cards, I did all of mine auction style. I did see some card sets that went for a lot of money, but others did not go for quite the same price. I was actually doing multiple sets at the same time, which is very, very difficult to do in terms of keeping everything together, and which does kind of fracture your potential market, right? The best thing to do if you have multiple things to sell is to sell them one at a time if you have to sell it through the auction mode, and just hope that everybody comes over and looks at your auction and maybe figure out a way to sort of slyly do a little bit of advertising on some of the message boards or something like that. The guy who sold these was on the APBA board and on the Tabletop Sports board, and he was talking about the fact that he was doing this. He put up links so people saw it. Most people responded and said, I don't have that kind of green. I can't buy this sort of thing, right? I mean, that's just kind of the way that it is, right? And I mean, it's really sad to say this, right? Because these cards are worth more money. Cards in this condition from the early 50s should be worth a lot of money. Considering how rare the product is, it absolutely should be. But the market's just not there. The demand's not there. And many of the collectors who would buy this already have one. It's kind of a shame. Anyway, there you go. In the final line here, I will say that if you're going to collect this stuff, be very careful. Buy what you're going to play with. Don't buy stuff to collect and resell it because the market's collapsing. I'll continue to cover it as the market continues to collapse. I'll talk with you later. Bye.